The digital clock on the corner of Liam's monitor flipped to 5:02 p.m. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Oratech Tower, Seattle was doing what it did best. A gray mist hung over the city, and a light, steady drizzle streaked the glass. Most of the desks on the 5th floor were still occupied. The low hum of servers and the clicking of keyboards filled the room. Liam closed his laptop and slid it into his tattered backpack. He pushed his chair in and grabbed his flannel jacket from the hook. He had exactly 28 minutes to cross downtown and reach the preschool. Lily didn't like being the last kid picked up. She told him it made her feel like a forgotten toy. He swung the pack over his shoulder and headed toward the elevators. The path led directly past the break room and the high-end espresso bar where the sales team usually gathered to talk about their commissions. Ethan Reed was leaning against the marble counter, holding a steaming cup. Brad and Sarah stood on either side of him. They were laughing at something on a phone screen. As Liam approached, Ethan stepped out into the middle of the hallway, effectively blocking the way. "Miller, where's the fire?" Ethan asked. He didn't move. "I have to go, Ethan." "School pickup?" Liam said. He looked at his watch. Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee. "School pickup. Again. You know, the rest of the team is staying until at least 7. We have the quarterly review on Monday. It's hard to build a culture of excellence when one of our engineers is always halfway out the door by mid-afternoon. It's after 5. My logs are finished. My tickets are cleared," Liam replied. "It's about the optics." "Liam," Sarah added. She crossed her arms. "The CEO is around this week. Seeing people leave early doesn't look great for our department." Liam shifted the weight of his bag. "I'm not leaving early. I'm leaving on time." Brad stepped closer, a wide grin on his face. "Give him a break, guys. He's got a princess tea party to attend. Or maybe he's playing with blocks tonight. Right, Liam? Is it Legos or Barbie dolls today?" Liam looked at Brad, then back at Ethan. "If you're worried about my performance, we can talk to HR on Monday. Otherwise, I'm going to be late." Ethan pulled a small, folded piece of white paper from his pocket. He held it out between 2 fingers. "Actually, we felt bad for you. We were talking at happy hour last night. You're a young guy, but you live like a monk. It's depressing." Liam didn't take the paper. "I'm fine, Ethan. Just take it," Ethan said. He shoved the paper toward Liam's chest. "We set you up, a blind date. Next Friday at 7, the Emerald." Liam frowned. "The Emerald? That place is expensive. We made the reservation under your name. Her name is Megan Smith. She's a friend of Sarah's cousin. 30 years old, blonde, very successful in her own way," Ethan said. Sarah nodded. "She's a great girl, Liam. You need to get out of the house. Lily can stay with a sitter for 1 night. It won't kill her." Liam looked at the paper. He didn't want to go. He didn't have the energy for small talk with a stranger, and he certainly didn't want to spend a week's grocery budget on a single dinner. But he also knew Ethan wouldn't move until he took it. "Just go on the date, Miller. Consider it a team-building exercise for your personal life," Ethan said. Liam reached out and took the note. "Fine. Next Friday. I'll think about it." "Oh, you'll like her," Brad said. He let out a loud, sharp laugh. "She's real quiet. Like, really quiet. She won't nag you or interrupt your boring stories about server maintenance. She's a great listener. Probably the best listener you'll ever meet." Sarah smothered a laugh with her hand. Ethan just smiled and finally stepped aside, opening the path to the elevators. "Don't let us down, Liam. We told her you were the golden boy of Oratech. Dress sharp," Ethan called out as Liam walked away. Liam didn't look back. He hit the down button for the elevator and waited. The doors opened, and he stepped into the mirrored box alone. He watched the floor numbers count down. He felt a dull headache starting behind his eyes. He walked through the lobby and waved at Silas, the security guard at the front desk. Silas gave him a quick nod. Liam pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped into the cool Seattle air. The rain was light, but it was enough to soak through his shirt in a matter of minutes. He reached his car in the parking garage and sat in the driver's seat for a moment. He pulled the crumpled note from his pocket. Megan Smith. The Emerald. 7 p.m. He tossed the paper onto the passenger seat and started the engine. He had to get to Lily. Everything else could wait. He backed out of the space, his mind already shifting from the office to the list of things he needed to do at home. Dinner, bath time, and checking the progress on Lily's latest science project. He drove out into the slow, wet crawl of Friday evening traffic, the red taillights of the cars ahead reflecting on his dashboard. He reached for his phone to check the time, his fingers brushing the edge of the note Ethan had given him, while Liam sat in his car staring at the brake lights ahead of him. The top floor of the Oratech Tower remained bright. High above the wet streets of Seattle, the penthouse office was a silent space of glass and polished wood. The rain streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city into a grid of flickering lights and gray shadows. Claire Vance sat at her desk, her eyes moving across a digital report on her tablet. The office was quiet. It was the kind of quiet she had lived in her entire life, but lately, it felt empty rather than peaceful. She tapped the screen, scrolling through the latest employee engagement surveys. Ava walked into the room. She didn't knock because Claire wouldn't have heard it. She simply walked into Claire's line of sight and waited for her to look up. Ava, signing. The janitorial staff is starting on the floor below. You should think about heading out. Claire, signing back. I'm reading the culture audit. It says everyone is happy. It says the office environment is inclusive and supportive. Every single department head signed off on it. Of course they did. They want their bonuses. No one tells the CEO that the office is a shark tank. Claire, that's the problem. I'm the CEO. Everyone speaks to me like they're reading from a script. They use the right words, they give the right smiles, but it's all fake. I don't know who these people actually are when I'm not in the room, which is why we're moving forward with the plan for Friday. Claire set the tablet down. She leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. I'm tired, Ava. I'm tired of being a title. I'm tired of being the deaf CEO who everyone has to be careful around. I want to have a real conversation with someone who doesn't know my net worth. The setup is locked in. I've handled the reservation at the Emerald, 7 o'clock. Claire. And the name? Ava. You're Megan Smith. I've created a basic digital trail for the name, just in case he looks you up. You're a freelance writer. It's a simple, believable story. Claire. And what about the man? Tell me about Liam again. He's a systems engineer on the 5th floor. He's been here about a year. His records are solid, but he doesn't socialize much. He's a single father. Apparently, he spends all his time with his daughter. Claire. A single father. He's probably exhausted. Ava. Probably. One of the sales leads, Ethan Reed, was the one who pushed for this date. I intercepted the request through the department's social coordinator. Ethan thinks he's setting Liam up on a blind date with a friend of a cousin. He has no idea that Megan is actually his boss. Claire. Why did Ethan choose him? They don't seem like friends. Ava. They aren't. Ethan is a climber. He likes to pick on people he thinks are below him. He thinks setting Liam up with a deaf woman is a hilarious prank. He's expecting Liam to be embarrassed. He wants to see Liam fail. Claire's expression hardened. So Ethan wants to use my disability as a punchline for a joke. Ava, exactly. He thinks he's the smartest guy in the building. He doesn't know I saw the messages he sent to his friends about it. He thinks this is just a way to make Liam look like a loser on Monday morning. Claire, good. Let him think that. I want to see how Liam handles it. If he's the kind of man who gets angry because his date can't hear him, I want to know. If he's the kind of man who stays out of pity, I want to know that too. I want to see the real Oratech, not the one in the brochures. Ava. And what if he's actually a good guy? What if he's just a dad trying to get through a dinner? Claire. Then I'll have a nice dinner. I'll have a conversation that isn't about stock options or hardware rollouts. I'll be Megan for a night. Megan doesn't have a board of directors to answer to. Megan just has a dinner date. Ava, you're taking a rideshare. No security. No Ava to interpret for you. You're on your own, Claire. Claire, I've been on my own my whole life, Ava. I can handle a dinner at the Emerald. I'll have my phone if I really get stuck. But I want to try. I want to see if he tries. Ava nodded and picked up Claire's coat from the chair. Then it's a date. Go home. You have a few days to practice being a freelance writer." Claire stood up and put on her coat. She walked to the window and looked down at the city. The rain was still falling, and the traffic was a slow crawl of red and white lights. Somewhere down there, an engineer named Liam was driving home to his daughter. He was probably thinking about school lunches or bedtime stories. He had no idea he was a target for a prank, and he had no idea he was about to meet the most powerful woman in the building. Claire touched the glass. She didn't want to be powerful tonight. She just wanted to be seen. She turned away from the view and headed for the elevator, leaving the silent, mirrored office behind. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about work. She was thinking about Friday. She was thinking about what it would be like to be Megan Smith. While Claire was in her apartment, carefully choosing a soft yellow sweater and wondering if Megan Smith would wear her hair up or down, the atmosphere at O'Malley's pub was far less contemplative. The bar sat directly across the street from the Oratech Tower, a dark, wood-paneled cave that served as the unofficial headquarters for the sales team every Friday evening. Ethan Reed sat at the center of a long table, surrounded by Brad, Sarah, and about 10 other employees from the marketing and sales departments. The air was thick with the smell of fried appetizers and cheap lager. It was the kind of crowd that thrived on volume and inside jokes, the kind of group that made anyone outside their circle feel invisible. "He actually took the note," Ethan said. He leaned back in his chair, a half-empty pitcher of beer sitting in front of him. "I thought I'd have to shove it down his throat, but he just took it. He looked like he was going to throw up," Sarah said. She was scrolling through her phone, occasionally showing memes to the person next to her. "The poor guy probably hasn't had a date since the Obama administration." "It's not just a date," Brad interrupted. He reached into the pocket of his expensive leather jacket and pulled out a small, square box wrapped in blue paper with a silver ribbon. He set it on the sticky table like it was a trophy. "It's a social experiment." A junior analyst named Mark leaned in. "What's in the box, Brad? You finally getting engaged?" The table erupted in laughter. Brad shook his head and tapped the top of the box. "Better. It's a custom-made gift box. I spent 3 hours setting it up. There's a pinhole camera embedded in the ribbon, right in the center of the bow. High definition, wide angle, and it streams directly to a private cloud server." "Are you serious?" Sarah asked. She stopped scrolling and looked at the box. "You're going to record the whole thing?" "Every second," Brad replied. "I already went down to the Emerald this afternoon. I talked to one of the bus boys, a kid named Leo. I gave him $20 to wait until Liam and his date are settled. He's going to walk up, put this on the table, and say it's a welcome gift from the management. They'll think it's just a box of truffles or something. It stays on the table the whole night, pointed right at Liam's face." Ethan picked up the box, examining it closely. "Can you see the lens?" "Not unless you're looking for it with a magnifying glass," Brad said. "The tech is incredible. We'll get his reaction when he tries to talk to her. We'll see the exact moment he realizes she can't hear a word he's saying." "This is a bit much, isn't it?" a woman from the marketing team asked. Her name was Jenny, and she was new to the group. "I mean, the guy is just a single dad. What did he ever do to you guys?" Ethan set the box down and turned his attention to her. "He exists, Jenny. He walks around that office like he's better than everyone else. Mr. Clean, Mr. Integrity. He doesn't come to happy hour. He doesn't stay late for the crunch. He just does his 8 hours and vanishes to go play with dolls. He makes the rest of us look like corporate drones because we actually care about our careers. He doesn't say he's better than you," Jenny said quietly. "He doesn't have to say it," Ethan snapped. "It's the vibe, the way he looks at us when we're joking around. He needs to be taken down a notch. He needs to be reminded that he's just as pathetic as everyone else. Maybe more." Brad pulled a thick wad of $20 bills from his wallet and slammed them onto the table. $500. That's the pot. I'm betting Miller doesn't last 20 minutes. Ethan pulled out his own wallet. "I'll match that. I say he bolts before the drinks even arrive. The second she starts raking her eyes over his lips to read them, he's going to panic. He'll make up some excuse about the kid having a fever and he'll be out the door in 5 minutes flat. Sarah reached into her purse. "I'm in for 100. I think he'll stay for one drink out of pure, awkward politeness. He's a nice guy, remember? He'll sit there, nodding like an idiot, and then he'll fake a phone call." The betting pool grew as other people at the table threw in 5s, 10s, and 20s. It became a game, a way to pass the time before the weekend truly began. They weren't just betting on a date. They were betting on the destruction of a man's dignity. "What do we do with the footage?" Mark asked. "We wait until Monday morning," Ethan said. "We'll edit it down to the best parts." The look of horror on his face. The awkward silence. "Then we'll post it to the internal Aura Fund channel anonymously. By lunch, the whole building will have seen it. Even the CEO will see what kind of sensitive employees we have downstairs." "You think the CEO would care?" Sarah asked. "Claire Vance? She's a machine," Ethan said. "She doesn't have time for losers. If she sees one of her engineers looking like a bumbling mess on a date we set up as a joke, it just proves he doesn't have the social intelligence to be promoted. It's a favor, really. We're helping the company identify its weakest links." Brad picked up the blue box and tucked it back into his pocket. "I'm going to drop this off at the restaurant on my way home. Leo is waiting for me at the back entrance. Make sure the battery is charged," Ethan warned. "Trust me," Brad said. "I've got backup power in the base of the box. We could record an 8-course meal if we had to, but we won't. Miller is going to fold like a card table." The group cheered, clinking their glasses together. Ethan took a long drink of his beer, feeling a sense of satisfaction. He didn't like Liam Miller. He didn't like anyone who didn't play the game his way. In Ethan's world, you were either a wolf or a sheep, and he had spent his whole life making sure he was the one with the teeth. "To Friday night," Ethan said, raising his glass again. "To the silent date," Brad added. The laughter continued late into the night. Around them, the rest of the bar went about their business, oblivious to the small, cruel plan being hatched in the corner. 10 blocks away, Liam was tucking Lily into bed, reading her a book about tectonic plates and volcanic eruptions. He was tired, his back ached from a long day of coding, and he was dreading the dinner at the Emerald. He didn't know about the blue box. He didn't know about the $500 pot. As he turned off the light in Lily's room, he saw the note from Ethan sitting on the nightstand. He picked it up, intending to throw it away, but then he stopped. He thought about what Lily had said earlier that evening about how he never went anywhere fun anymore. He sighed and put the note in his pocket. He decided he would go, just to say he did it. He had no idea that he was walking into a trap, and even less of an idea that the person waiting for him was the only person in the city who could see through the wolves at O'Malley's. Across town, Claire Vance sat in her dark living room, her fingers tracing the edge of an ASL dictionary. She was nervous. She didn't know why she was doing this, only that she needed to know if there was anyone left in her company who wasn't a shark. She was looking for a human being. The wolves were looking for a joke. By next Friday, everyone would get exactly what they were looking for. Brad had finished his business with Leo the busboy an hour earlier. The small blue box with the silver ribbon now sat precisely in the center of a 2-person table near the window, its pinhole lens aimed at the empty chair where the date would soon sit. The restaurant was about half full, with 20 or so diners scattered across the room. Soft jazz played over the speakers, and the smell of expensive seafood and butter filled the air. Liam Miller sat in his chair, feeling like an imposter. He had traded his flannel shirt for a crisp white button-down and a dark blazer he hadn't worn since his wife's funeral. His hands were folded on the tablecloth, but he kept unrolling and re-rolling his cloth napkin. He looked at the blue box in front of him, then at his watch. It was 6:58 p.m. Outside on the sidewalk, Silas was finishing his night patrol of the pier. The cool Seattle air felt good against his face. He walked past the large, glowing windows of the Emerald, his boots clicking on the pavement. He glanced inside, expecting to see the usual crowd of tourists and tech executives. Instead, he saw a familiar face. Silas stopped. He leaned closer to the glass, squinting. It was Liam. He recognized the man from the Aura Tech parking garage, the guy who always asked about Silas's grandkids and never forgot to say have a safe night. Liam looked terrified. He was staring at the door with the intensity of a man waiting for a medical diagnosis. Silas stood there for a moment, wondering why a guy like Liam was sitting alone at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He saw the way Liam adjusted his collar and wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. "Good luck, son," Silas muttered to himself. He didn't move on just yet. Something felt off. Inside, tucked away in a circular booth in the far corner of the bar area, Ethan, Brad, and Sarah were huddled together. They had a clear line of sight to Liam's table but were far enough away to remain unnoticed. "Is he sweating?" "I think he's sweating," Brad said. He took a sip of his martini, his eyes locked on Liam. "He looks like he's about to bolt," Sarah replied. She pulled her phone from her clutch and propped it up against a glass. The camera lens pointed toward the window table. "I'm starting the recording now. We need the baseline of his misery before she shows up. Check the feed from the box," Ethan ordered. Brad pulled out his own phone and swiped the screen. "It's crystal clear. We can see the sweat on his upper lip. This is going to be legendary." "Just wait," Ethan said. "When she walks in and starts raking her eyes over his mouth because she can't hear a word he says, he's going to crumble. I give him 5 minutes before he makes a run for it." "Shh, look," Sarah whispered. "The hostess is moving." At the front of the restaurant, the heavy oak doors opened. Claire Vance stepped inside. She wasn't the CEO tonight. She had traded her power suits for a soft, mustard yellow sweater and a pair of dark, tailored jeans. Her blonde hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and her makeup was minimal. She looked radiant, but also remarkably normal. She looked like Megan Smith. The hostess greeted her, and Claire gave a small, practiced nod. She followed the woman through the dining room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She saw Liam before he saw her. He looked older than he did in his employee badge photo, and his shoulders were hunched with tension. He looked like a man who carried the weight of the world, and for a second, Claire felt a pang of guilt for being part of this setup. Liam looked up. His breath caught in his throat. He had expected a Megan who looked like one of Sarah's friends, polished, loud, and probably bored. The woman walking toward him looked like a sunrise. She had a kind face and eyes that seemed to be taking in every detail of the room with an intensity he didn't understand. Liam stood up so quickly he almost knocked his chair over. "Megan?" he asked. Claire reached the table. She didn't answer. She watched his lips move, then gave him a bright, genuine smile. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm. "Hello," Liam said, speaking a bit louder than necessary. "It's so nice to meet you. I'm Liam." Claire sat down and gestured for him to do the same. She pulled a small notepad and a pen from her purse, but then she hesitated. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the kindness in his eyes. She decided to stick to the plan, but she felt a strange urge to just be honest. Back in the corner booth, Sarah was tapping her phone screen. "Is she sitting?" "Yes." Record. "Look at his face," Brad hissed. "He's trying to talk to her and she's just smiling at him. He's so confused. This is perfect. He's going to realize it any second," Ethan said. "Look at him leaning in. He thinks she didn't hear him." "Speak up, Miller. She's deaf. Not at the next table." Sarah laughed quietly. "He's going to be so embarrassed when he has to shout in a place like this. The people at the next table are already looking at them." On the sidewalk, Silas hadn't moved. He saw the woman sit down. He saw the way Liam's expression shifted from terror to a kind of stunned awe. Silas knew that woman. He had opened the door for her every morning for 3 years. It was Claire Vance. Silas frowned. Why was the CEO of Auratech on a blind date with a junior engineer, and why was she acting like she couldn't hear him? He looked past their table and saw the 3 figures in the corner booth. He saw Sarah's phone. He saw Ethan's smug, expectant face. Silas's jaw tightened. He had been in the military long enough to know when someone was being ambushed. He didn't know the specifics, but he saw the blue box on the table and the vultures in the corner. He realized Liam was the target of a very cruel game, and the CEO was either the bait or the hunter. Liam leaned across the table. "Megan, can you hear me?" Claire watched his lips. She felt the weight of the hidden camera she knew must be nearby. She looked at Liam, who was waiting for an answer with genuine concern, not annoyance. I can't hear you, Claire said. Her voice was clear but had the flat, careful tone of someone who couldn't monitor their own volume. Liam froze. He looked at her, then at the notepad on the table, then back at her eyes. The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. In the corner, Ethan grinned. Here we go. The exit is in 3, 2, 1. But Liam didn't stand up. He didn't look for the exit. He took a deep breath, and his shoulders finally dropped. A small, sad smile touched his face. Okay, Liam said, his voice dropping back to a normal level. That's okay. He reached out. Not for his drink or his coat, but for his own hands. He lifted them into the space between them. And to Claire's absolute shock, he began to move his fingers in a fluid, practiced motion. Silas, watching from the window, let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Ethan's grin vanished. Sarah's phone recorded the moment the trap didn't just fail, it evaporated. Liam. Signing. Hi, I'm Liam. I taught myself ASL because my daughter loves learning about all kinds of languages. It is very nice to meet you, Megan. Claire sat perfectly still. Her hands were resting on the white tablecloth, and for a moment, she forgot she was supposed to be playing a part. She looked at his hands, then up at his face. His smile wasn't the tight, polite mask people usually wore when they found out she was deaf. It was open. It was kind. It was the smile of a man who was happy to be exactly where he was. Claire, signing back. You know ASL? Your daughter taught you? Liam. Not exactly. Lily is 6. She went through a phase where she wanted to learn how to talk to everyone. We started with a few basic signs from a book, and I just kept going. I wanted to be able to keep up with her. It's been a fun project for us. Claire felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. It had been years since someone had surprised her like this. Most people she met either shouted at her or treated her like a puzzle they couldn't solve. Liam was just talking to her. In the corner booth, the atmosphere had shifted from smug anticipation to pure confusion. Brad leaned forward so far he almost dipped his tie into his drink. He stared at his phone screen, which was displaying the live feed from the blue box on Liam's table. The hell is he doing? Brad asked. Is he doing sign language? Sarah grabbed Brad's arm, her eyes wide. He is. He's actually signing to her. Look at how fast his hands are moving. He's not just faking it. Ethan didn't say anything. He gripped his glass until his knuckles turned white. This wasn't the plan. The plan was for Liam to be the uncomfortable victim of a cruel joke. He was supposed to be the man who couldn't communicate, the man who looked like a fool. Instead, he looked like he was having the time of his life. How does a systems engineer from the 5th floor know how to do that? Ethan muttered. It doesn't make sense. He's a nobody. Maybe he's not a nobody, Sarah said, her voice dropping. She looked at the screen, watching Claire's face. Look at her. She looks different. She's not just smiling politely anymore. I don't care, Ethan snapped. He's still going to fail. Just keep recording. He'll mess up. He'll say something stupid. Ethan, look at the restaurant, Sarah whispered. People are watching them, and they aren't laughing. It was true. The diners at the nearby tables had noticed the silent conversation. In a room filled with the clink of silverware and the low murmur of voices, the rhythmic, graceful movement of Liam and Claire's hands drew the eye. It didn't look like a struggle. It looked like a dance. Claire, so Lily is the linguist in the family? Liam, she tries to be. Last week she decided we needed to learn how to sign the names of different types of volcanoes. Do you have any idea how complicated the sign for pyroclastic flow is? Claire laughed. It was a real, unguarded sound that made Liam's eyes crinkle at the corners. Claire, I can imagine. She sounds like a handful. Liam, she's everything. She's the reason I do anything, really. I'm sorry if I'm a bit rusty, though. I usually only practice with a first grader who cares more about rocks than grammar. Claire, you're doing fine, Liam. Your signs are very clear. Better than most people who have been learning for years. That's good to hear. I was worried I'd come across as an idiot. Ethan and the guys at the office, they made it sound like this was going to be a big test. Claire's hands hesitated. A test? What do you mean? Liam looked down at his drink, then back at her. He decided to be honest. They've been writing me lately. About being a single dad, about leaving on time to pick up Lily. They told me I needed to get out more. They said they were setting me up with someone special. I think they wanted to see how I'd handle it. Claire, and how do you feel you're handling it? Liam, honestly, this is the best time I've had in months. I was so nervous I almost didn't come. I'm glad I did. You're easy to talk to, Megan. Claire felt a pang of guilt at the name, but she pushed it down. She wanted to stay in this moment. She wanted to be Megan, the woman who could just sit across from a good man and talk about volcanoes. Outside, Silas was still standing near the window. He saw the way the group in the corner was staring at their phones, and he saw the way Liam was looking at Claire. He didn't know Liam could sign, but it filled him with a quiet pride. He'd seen a lot of people come and go from the Aura Tech building, but he'd always had a soft spot for the guy who treated everyone with respect. Silas looked back at Ethan and his friends. He saw the frustration on Ethan's face and the way Sarah was starting to look uncomfortable. He knew the wolves had lost their teeth. Back at the table, Liam reached for the blue box. The waiter said this was from the house. A welcome gift. Should we see what's inside? Claire looked at the box. She knew what it was. She knew Brad had been in the restaurant earlier. She knew there was a camera inside that ribbon. Claire, maybe we should wait. I'd rather just talk for a while. You're right. Chocolate can wait. Tell me more about your writing. Ethan said you were successful in your own way. He's a bit of a jerk, so I'm guessing that means you're actually doing something impressive. Claire smiled. It was a small, secret smile. Claire, I write about things that people usually ignore. I try to find the truth in the middle of all the noise. Liam, I like that. We could use more of that at Aura Tech. Most of what we do is just adding to the noise. They continued to talk, their hands moving in the quiet space they had created. The hidden camera in the blue box continued to stream, but it wasn't capturing a joke. It was capturing the beginning of something that none of the people at O'Malley's or the Riverside Grill could have predicted. Brad stared at his phone, his thumb hovering over the stop button. This is boring. They're just talking. No one is going to watch this. I think you're wrong, Brad, Sarah said softly. I think people will watch it, just not for the reasons you think. Ethan didn't respond. He just watched Liam Miller, the man he had tried to break, looking more confident and more alive than he had ever seen him. The trap was still on the table, but the only people caught in it were the ones who had set it. The waiter approached the table, his footsteps silenced by the thick carpet of the emerald. He held 2 menus bound in dark leather and set them down with a professional nod. Liam picked his up but immediately turned it so Claire could see the section he was looking at. Liam, signing. The salmon here is caught locally. It's a Seattle staple. Would you like that, or do you prefer something else? Claire, signing back. The salmon sounds perfect. Thank you for asking. Liam looked up at the waiter. We'll have 2 orders of the cedar plank salmon, please, and 2 glasses of the Chardonnay. The waiter nodded and retreated. Liam leaned back, his tension finally starting to dissolve. The soft lighting of the restaurant made the space feel smaller, more private. Claire, you seem more relaxed now. Ordering an ASL isn't exactly a standard skill for an engineer. I'm just glad I didn't mess it up. I've lived in Seattle for a decade, but I haven't been to a place like this in a long time. My wife and I used to save up for months to go out somewhere nice. After she passed, I just stopped going out. It felt wrong to sit at a table for 2 by myself. Claire, how long has it been? Liam, 3 years. She had a heart condition that no one caught. One day we were planning a trip to the mountains, and the next day she was gone. It was sudden. It left a hole in everything. For a long time, the city felt very gray, even grayer than the usual weather. Claire? And Lily? How did she handle it? Liam, she was only 3. She doesn't remember much, which is a blessing and a curse. She has her mom's eyes and her curiosity. Sometimes she asks me why I don't talk to the air when I'm lonely. I tell her I talk to her instead. She's the reason I stayed in Seattle. I wanted her to grow up where her mom's memories are. Claire. You're a good man, Liam. Most people would have moved away to escape the pain. Liam. I didn't want to escape it. I wanted to learn how to live with it. That's why I started the ASL thing with her. It was a new way to communicate, a new way to build a world that was just ours. It felt like we were learning a secret code. As Liam was signing, his eyes drifted toward the back of the restaurant. He had been so focused on Claire that he hadn't really looked at the other diners. In a circular booth near the bar, he saw a familiar flash of blonde hair. Sarah was sitting there, her body angled toward their table. She was holding her phone up at chest level, the screen glowing. Next to her, Ethan and Brad were huddled together, staring at a second phone. Liam's hand stopped mid-sign. He didn't look angry, but his face went very still. He looked at the blue gift box sitting between him and Claire. He noticed the way the silver ribbon was tied, and he saw the tiny, dark circle in the center of the bow. Claire? Liam? Is something wrong? Liam took a slow breath. He didn't look at the booth again. He kept his eyes on Claire. Liam, I'm so sorry. I'm an engineer. I should have noticed this sooner. I'm a bit slow when it comes to people like Ethan. Claire, what are you talking about? Liam, I just saw my coworkers in the corner booth. Sarah is holding her phone up, and Ethan and Brad are watching something on theirs. I think that box on the table isn't a gift from the restaurant. I think it's a camera. Claire's heart skipped. She already knew about the camera, but seeing Liam realize it was different. She expected him to stand up and shout. She expected him to be humiliated. They set this up. They told me you were a friend of Sarah's cousin. They wanted to record me on a date with a woman who couldn't hear me. They thought it would be funny to watch me struggle. They probably have a bet going on how long it takes for me to leave. Claire, does that make you want to leave? No, it makes me want to stay. But I'm sorry that they're using you for this. It's cruel to bring a stranger into their office drama. You didn't sign up for a hidden camera show. Claire. And you? You're the one being filmed. Liam. I don't care about them. I stopped caring what Ethan thought a long time ago. But I care that you might feel like a punchline. I want you to know that I'm not part of it. I didn't know. Claire reached across the table. She didn't sign this time. She simply placed her hand over his. Her fingers were steady, and her touch was firm. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of safety that had nothing to do with her bank account or her security detail. She felt safe because the man sitting across from her was choosing her dignity over his own pride. Claire signing, I know you didn't know. And it's okay. They think they're watching a joke, but they're not. They're just watching two people having dinner. You aren't upset. Claire, I've dealt with people like Ethan my whole life. They think silence is a weakness. They think they can control what they don't understand. But they're wrong. Let them watch. Let them record. It doesn't change the salmon, and it doesn't change the conversation. Liam smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. He squeezed her hand gently before letting go. You're a lot tougher than Ethan Reed, Megan. Claire, you have no idea. Well, if we're being filmed, we might as well give them a boring show. Let's talk about something they'll hate. Tell me about your favorite books, or tell me about the most boring writing project you've ever had. Claire, I once spent 3 months writing technical manuals for industrial dishwashers. Liam, perfect. Tell me everything. Every detail. Let's make Ethan fall asleep watching his phone. Claire laughed, and the sound was warm and bright. She felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had come here to test the culture of her company, to see if there were any good people left in the building. She had found one. As they talked, Liam continued to sign with a fluid, easy grace. He didn't look at the corner booth again. He didn't look at the blue box. He focused entirely on the woman in front of him. Back in the corner, Ethan frowned at his screen. Why aren't they fighting? Why is he still smiling? Sarah, check the audio. Is the mic working? It's working, Sarah said, her voice sounding uncertain. They're talking about dishwashers and technical specs. Liam is signing about server architecture. This is garbage, Brad complained. I put $500 on this. He's supposed to be crying or leaving. He's not leaving. Ethan said, his voice low and bitter. The bastard is actually enjoying himself. On the sidewalk, Silas saw the laughter through the glass. He saw the way Liam and Claire were leaning toward each other, completely oblivious to the world around them. He adjusted his cap and continued his walk down the pier. He didn't know what would happen on Monday, but for now, the rain in Seattle felt a little less cold. The salmon arrived, steaming and fragrant. Liam and Claire picked up their forks, the silent conversation continuing between bites. They were two people in a crowded room, surrounded by hidden cameras and mean-spirited bets, but for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone. They had found a language that Ethan Reed would never be able to translate. The doors swung open, and a small figure in a purple shirt with sparkly stars burst into the dining room. She was carrying a large, clunky object made of brown plastic and gray paint. Liam's mother followed close behind, giving the hostess a quick, apologetic wave. Lily didn't care about the quiet atmosphere or the expensive wine glasses. She saw her father and headed straight for the table, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. "Dad, I got it! I finished the paint," Lily shouted. Liam stood up, caught her in a half hug, and gently steered her toward the chair next to Claire. "Lily, remember where we are. Use your indoor voice, okay?" Lily slowed down, but her eyes were already locked on Claire. She set the plastic volcano right in the center of the table, next to the hidden camera in the blue box. She didn't look at Claire with the hesitation adults usually had. She looked at her with pure, unfiltered excitement. Liam looked at Claire and signed. "Liam, this is the scientist I told you about. Lily, this is Megan." Lily didn't wait for a prompt. She stood on her tiptoes, looked Claire in the eye, and raised her hands. Her signs were big, enthusiastic, and a little bit messy, but the message was unmistakable. Lily, signing. "Hi, Miss Megan. Do you want to see my volcano erupt? It is a shield volcano. It's very dangerous." Claire's breath caught. She had been CEO of a billion-dollar company for 5 years. She had dealt with aggressive board members, hostile takeovers, and international press. But looking at this 6-year-old girl who was offering her a plastic mountain as a peace offering, Claire felt her defenses crumble. She didn't see a prank. She didn't see a corporate culture audit. She saw a family. Claire reached out and pulled Lily into a warm hug. She held the little girl for a long second, closing her eyes. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright and wet. "Claire, signing. I would love to see it erupt, Lily. Is it going to be a big explosion?" "The biggest," Lily said, switching back to her voice. "I have the baking soda in my pocket. Grandma helped me measure it." Liam's mother stepped up to the table. "I'm sorry to interrupt your date, Liam." But she wouldn't stop talking about showing her the paint job. "It's okay, Mom," Liam said. "Megan, this is my mother, Diane." "Mom, this is Megan." Diane gave Claire a warm, knowing smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Megan. My son hasn't looked this happy in years. I'll take Lily back to the car in a minute. I just wanted to make sure the volcano arrived safely." Claire, signing to Diane. "Thank you for bringing her. She's wonderful." Liam looked at his daughter, then at Claire. "You're going to get baking soda all over your nice sweater if we do this here, Lily. Maybe we save the eruption for the parking lot?" "No, now," Lily insisted. She looked at Claire. "Can we do a little eruption? Just a tiny bit of lava?" Claire looked at the blue box. She knew the camera was watching. She knew Ethan and Brad were seeing every bit of this. She leaned forward, her face glowing. "Claire, signing. Let's do it. I want to see the lava." Liam sighed, but he was smiling. He took a water glass and moved it out of the way. "Okay, one tiny eruption. For the sake of science." Lily carefully poured a small amount of white powder into the top of the plastic mountain. She looked at Claire, waiting for a signal. Claire gave her a thumbs up. Lily added a few drops of red-tinted vinegar from a small vial. The volcano bubbled over, a small stream of pink foam sliding down the gray plastic and onto the tablecloth. "Boom!" Lily whispered. Claire clapped her hands, her face lit up with a joy that was entirely real. She reached out and touched the foam with her finger. "Claire, signing. That was incredible, Lily. You're a great scientist. I know, Lily said. She leaned in close to Claire, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Dad says you talk with your hands like the people in my books. Can you teach me how to sign volcano? Claire spent the next 5 minutes showing Lily how to form the signs. The restaurant went on around them. Waiters carried trays. Couples talked about their weeks, but at the window table, 3 people were locked in a world that felt completely separate from everything else. In the corner booth, the silence was heavy. Ethan had stopped drinking. He was staring at the table, his face pale. Brad had lowered his phone, the live feed of the eruption still glowing on the screen. Sarah looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. The prank had been designed to highlight Liam's struggle. It was supposed to show him trapped in a situation he couldn't handle. But as they watched him wipe pink foam off the table while Lily laughed and Claire raked her fingers through the little girl's hair, the prank felt hollow. It didn't look like a struggle. It looked like something they didn't have. This is stupid, Brad muttered. It's just a kid and a plastic toy. Shut up, Brad, Sarah said. Her voice was flat. They look like a family. We look like 3 assholes sitting in a dark corner with a hidden camera. We're just having some fun, Ethan said, but he didn't sound convinced. He looked at Liam Miller, the guy he had called a nobody. Liam was glowing. He looked powerful in a way Ethan didn't understand. He wasn't powerful because of his title or his paycheck. He was powerful because he was loved. The video is useless, Sarah said. She hit the stop button on her phone. If we post this, we're the ones who look bad. Everyone will just see a nice guy having a nice dinner with his kid and a pretty girl. We'll be the villains. Ethan gripped his glass. We'll edit it. We'll make it look different. You can't edit that, Sarah replied, gesturing toward the window. Look at them. You can't fake that kind of connection. We lost, Ethan. The joke is on us. Ethan didn't answer. He watched as Liam's mother gathered Lily in the volcano. He watched Claire give Lily one last hug and a promise to see her again. He felt a bitter sense of isolation, a realization that all his office politics and power moves had left him sitting in a bar with people who didn't actually like him. Back at the table, Liam's mother and Lily headed for the door. Lily turned back one last time and signed goodbye with a wide grin. Claire signed it back, her hand lingering in the air. Liam, signing. I'm so sorry about the lava. I'll pay for the dry cleaning of the tablecloth. Claire signing. Don't you dare. That was the best part of the night. Thank you for letting me meet her, Liam. Thank you for being so good to her. She's going to talk about this for a month. Claire, I hope so. I think I'm going to talk about it for a month, too. Liam reached across and took her hand again. The hidden camera in the blue box was still there, but it didn't matter anymore. The wolves had gone quiet, and the youngest guest had left behind something much more permanent than a vinegar stain. She had turned a target into a person, and a CEO into a friend. Should we get some dessert? Liam asked aloud. I think we both earned some chocolate after that eruption. Claire nodded, her smile wider than it had been in years. Chocolate sounds perfect. The weekend in Seattle had been unusually clear, but by Monday morning, the low, gray clouds had returned to hang over the Tech Tower. Liam pulled his car into the parking garage at 8:15 a.m. He felt different today. Usually, Monday mornings were a struggle of coffee and missed deadlines, but the memory of Friday night kept him steady. He had spent Sunday afternoon at the park with Lily, teaching her more signs and talking about Miss Megan. As he walked toward the elevators, he noticed the lobby was unusually quiet. About 20 employees were clustered near the security desk or standing in small groups by the elevators, whispering. Silas was at his post, his back straighter than usual. When he saw Liam, Silas didn't just give a casual nod. He gave a sharp, respectful tip of his cap and held the elevator door open. Morning, Silas, Liam said. Everything okay? It's a big day, Liam, Silas replied. Just keep your head up. Liam stepped into the elevator, puzzled. When he reached the 5th floor, the tension was even thicker. Usually, the engineering bay was a mess of loud chatter and humming machines. Today, it was a sea of eyes. People were staring at him over their monitors. Some looked away quickly, while others gave him small, supportive smiles he didn't understand. In the center of the room, near the espresso bar, Ethan Reed was already holding court. Brad was slumped in a chair next to him, staring into a cup of black coffee with bloodshot eyes. Sarah stood a few feet away, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. A crowd of about 15 coworkers had gathered around them. "I'm telling you, it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion," Ethan said, his voice carrying across the floor. He was sitting there, waving his hands around like he was trying to swat flies, and then the kid shows up with a plastic toy. It was the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. I almost felt bad for the girl. "Did you, Ethan?" a voice asked. It was Mark, one of the junior analysts who usually followed Ethan around. He didn't sound like he was laughing. "Of course," Ethan said. "The guy is a disaster. He has no self-awareness. He actually thought he was having a real date. We've got the footage to prove it. We've all seen the footage." "Ethan," Jenny from marketing said. She was standing at the edge of the crowd, holding her phone. Brad made sure of that. Brad groaned and buried his face in his hands. "I told you, it was an accident. I hit the wrong share button on the way home from the bar. I thought I was sending it to the private thread." "Well, you sent it to the Aura Tech General Group," Jenny said. She looked around at the other 30 people in the room. "All 500 of us got the notification at 2 a.m. on Saturday." Ethan's smile faltered. "So? Then you saw it. You saw how pathetic he looked." "That's not what we saw," Mark said. He stepped forward, looking Ethan in the eye. "We saw a guy who actually bothered to learn a second language to help his kid. We saw a guy who was incredibly patient and kind to a stranger while his coworkers were hiding in a corner like middle school bullies." "It was a joke, Mark. Relax," Ethan said, though his voice was losing its edge. "It wasn't funny," Sarah added quietly. She looked at Liam, who had stopped near his desk, listening. "Ethan, we watched the whole thing. The eruption, the hug, all of it. We saw you guys laughing in the corner while they were just being decent people. It made us all feel sick." "Oh, please," Ethan scoffed. "Since when did this office become a support group? It was a prank. Miller will get over it. He's lucky we even got him a date with someone that pretty. You don't get it, do you?" Jenny asked. "You used a woman's disability to try and humiliate a coworker. That's not a prank. That's a HR nightmare. And the worst part is, she was actually nice. She was better than any of us." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the sound of a heavy engine idling outside the front glass doors cut him off. Everyone turned toward the windows that looked down at the main entrance. A large, polished black SUV had pulled up to the curb. It was the vehicle usually reserved for the board of directors or the chairman. The lobby doors opened, and Silas stepped out onto the sidewalk. His movements were formal, almost military. He reached for the rear passenger door and opened it with a deep, respectful bow. Claire Vance stepped out of the car. The office on the 5th floor went dead silent. Liam felt the air leave his lungs. Claire wasn't wearing the yellow sweater or the jeans. She was in a sharp, charcoal gray power suit with a white silk blouse. Her hair was pulled back into a tight, professional bun. She looked every bit the CEO who had built Aura Tech from the ground up. Ava stepped out from the other side of the car, carrying a tablet and a stack of files. She followed Claire toward the entrance. "Is that?" Brad whispered, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "That's the CEO, Sarah said, her voice trembling. "That's Claire Vance." Ethan stood frozen, his coffee cup midair. He stared down at the entrance, then back at the phone on the table that was still displaying the thumbnail of Megan Smith from the Friday night video. "No," Ethan muttered. "No, that's not possible. Megan is Sarah's cousin's friend." "Sarah, you said." "I lied, Ethan," Sarah snapped, her voice cracking. "Ava called me weeks ago. She said she needed a favor for a culture audit. She told me to tell you whatever I had to so you'd set up that date. I didn't know it was Claire. I just thought it was some executive from HR." "You set me up?" Ethan asked, his voice rising in panic. "No, Ethan," Mark said, looking at the elevator lights as they began to climb. "You set yourself up. You chose the target. You chose the restaurant. You even chose the hidden camera. The elevator chimed. The double doors slid open, and Claire Vance stepped onto the 5th floor. Ava was a step behind her, her hands moving in a quick, silent report. Claire didn't look at the coffee bar. She didn't look at the crowd of 30 people who were staring at her in absolute terror. She walked with a purpose that made the floor feel like it was vibrating. She headed straight for the engineering bay. Every person she passed stood a little straighter, their breath held. Liam stood by his desk, his hands hanging at his sides. He felt a strange mix of shock and a weird sense of relief. He didn't know what was about to happen, but he knew the world had just shifted. Claire stopped 3 feet from Liam's desk. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The power she radiated was enough to fill the entire room. She looked at Liam, and for a split second, the cold, professional mask softened. Her eyes searched his, finding the same man who had wiped pink vinegar foam off a tablecloth. Then, she turned her head. Her gaze moved slowly across the room until it landed on Ethan Reed, who was standing by the espresso bar, looking like he wanted to vanish through the floorboards. Claire didn't move. She didn't raise him with a shout. She simply waited. The silence was the most terrifying thing any of them had ever experienced. In that silence, every mean-spirited joke, every bet, and every second of the leaked video seemed to echo through the office. The truth had arrived, and it didn't need to say a word. The silence on the 5th floor was absolute. Usually, the office was a chaotic mix of ringing phones, the hum of the air conditioning, and the distant clatter of the shipping department. But as Claire Vance walked deeper into the room, the only sound was the rhythmic click of her heels on the polished concrete floor. One by one, the 30 employees standing near their desks straightened their backs. It wasn't the usual hurried the boss is coming posture. It was a heavy, stunned stillness. They looked at Claire, then at the elevator, then back at her. The woman they had seen in the leaked video, the soft-spoken Megan in the yellow sweater, was gone. In her place was the architect of their company, a woman whose reputation for precision and zero tolerance for incompetence was legendary. Claire didn't look at them. She kept her eyes forward, her pace steady. She passed the break room area where Ethan, Brad, and Sarah were huddled. Ethan took a shaky step forward. His face was a mask of pale sweat. He cleared his throat, the sound loud in the quiet room. "Miss Vance?" he started, his voice cracking. I can explain the project." The dinner. It was all meant to be. Claire didn't stop. She didn't turn her head. She didn't even acknowledge that a human being had spoken. She walked past Ethan as if he were a ghost, a glitch in the architecture of the building. Her shoulder brushed within inches of him, but her gaze remained fixed on the engineering bay. Ethan's mouth stayed open, but no more words came out. He looked at Brad, who was staring at the floor, and then at Sarah, who had turned away to hide her face. Ethan felt a cold, hollow sensation in his chest. In the world of corporate power, a reprimand meant you were still worth talking to. Being ignored meant you were already gone. Claire reached the cluster of desks where the systems engineers worked. She stopped at the corner desk, right in front of Liam. Liam stood up slowly. He felt the eyes of every person in the building on him. He looked at Claire, and for a moment he didn't see the CEO. He saw the woman who had hugged his daughter. He saw the person who had laughed at a plastic volcano. Liam, signing. "Good morning." Claire looked at him for a long moment. The hardness in her eyes softened, just enough for him to see it. She reached into the pocket of her charcoal blazer and pulled out a small object. It was a yellow No. 2 pencil, the kind used in elementary schools. The tip was dull, and there were small teeth marks near the eraser where Lily had chewed on it while thinking about tectonic plates. Claire leaned forward and placed the pencil gently on Liam's keyboard. Claire signing. "Lily left this in my pocket when she showed me the lava zones. I thought she might need it for school today. Liam, thank you. She was looking for that this morning. Claire, it's an important tool for a scientist. We shouldn't let her lose it." Claire stood up straight again. She looked around the room, her eyes grazing the faces of the engineers and the sales staff. No one moved. No one breathed. She turned her attention back to Liam. "Claire, I've reviewed the systems logs from the weekend. Your tickets were handled perfectly. I'd like to see you in my office at 2 o'clock to discuss the infrastructure project. Ava will send the invite. Liam, I'll be there. Claire gave him a sharp, professional nod. She turned on her heel and began the walk back toward the elevators. Ava, who had been standing a few feet back, tapped something into her tablet and followed. As Claire passed Ethan's group again, Ethan tried to find his voice. Miss Vance, about the video. The backup server. Claire didn't even blink. She reached the elevator. The doors slid open, and she stepped inside. As the mirrored doors closed, she was looking directly at the reflection of the office, her face unreadable. The second the elevator chime signaled her departure, the room erupted into a low, frantic murmur. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her hands shaking as she grabbed her purse. She knew the whole time. Sarah, she knew. "We're dead," Brad said. He sat down heavily in his chair, staring at his monitor. "We're actually dead." Ethan didn't say anything. He was looking at his desk, then at the elevator, then at Liam. He saw Liam pick up the yellow pencil and tuck it carefully into his shirt pocket. Ethan realized that there would be no big scene. There would be no dramatic firing in front of the whole staff. That wasn't Claire's style. Instead, he would simply be phased out. His emails would go unanswered. His projects would be reassigned. His name would be erased from the organizational chart by the end of the week. He had spent his career trying to make Liam Miller invisible, but in the end, he was the one who had disappeared. Mark, the junior analyst, walked past Ethan toward the coffee machine. He didn't look at him. No one did. The wolves of the sales department had been turned into shadows. Jenny from marketing walked over to Liam's desk. "Hey, Liam," she said quietly. That was something. I'm really sorry about what happened Friday. We should have said something sooner." "It's okay, Jenny," Liam said. He sat back down and opened his laptop. Is Megan, Claire, is she okay?" "She's fine," Liam said. "She's exactly who she's supposed to be." Liam looked at his monitor and began to code. He felt a strange sense of peace. The prank was over. The secret was out. But as he touched the pencil in his pocket, he knew that the most important part of Friday night hadn't changed. Across the room, Ethan Reed picked up his briefcase. He looked around the office one last time, hoping for a sympathetic glance or a nod of solidarity. He found nothing. The 30 people on the 5th floor were already back to work, their heads down, their keyboards clicking. The silence that Claire Vance had brought into the room remained, and Ethan realized he would have to live in it for a very long time. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps sounding loud and hollow. He didn't wait for the elevator, he took the stairs. At 10 a.m., Ava sent the calendar invite. Meeting. Infrastructure expansion. Attendees. Claire Vance. Liam Miller. Liam clicked accept and went back to his work. Outside, the Seattle rain continued to fall. But for the first time in a year, the gray clouds didn't feel heavy. They felt like a clean slate. He had a meeting at 2, and he had a daughter to pick up at 5. He looked at the yellow pencil on his desk and smiled. The day was just beginning. After the meeting on Monday, the atmosphere at Aura Tech had changed. It wasn't a loud shift, but the air felt lighter. Ethan's desk was cleared out by Wednesday afternoon. Sarah had transferred to the Chicago office, and Brad was kept on a short leash in a different department. No one talked about the video anymore. It had been deleted from the server, and more importantly, it had been deleted from the office culture. People started leaving at 5 p.m. without looking over their shoulders. By Sunday, the gray clouds had finally broken, leaving a rare, bright Seattle afternoon. Gasworks Park was crowded with families, kite flyers, and couples sitting on the grass overlooking Lake Union. The rusted machinery of the old gas plant stood like giant sculptures against the blue sky. Lily was a few yards away, running through a patch of grass. She had a plastic bubble wand in one hand and a bottle of soap in the other. She was frantically waving her arms, creating a trail of shimmering spheres that drifted toward the water. "Dad, look, I made a giant one," Lily yelled, pointing at a bubble the size of her head. Liam sat on a weathered wooden bench, leaning back with his arms spread across the top of the seat. He was wearing his favorite worn-out flannel and a baseball cap. "I see it, Lil. Don't trip on that rock." Claire sat right next to him. She had her sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She wasn't the woman in the charcoal suit today. She wore a simple white t-shirt and a pair of old sneakers. She looked relaxed, the tension in her jaw completely gone. "Claire," signing, "she has so much energy. I don't know how you keep up with her every day." Liam, signing back, "I don't. I just try to keep her in sight and hope she tires herself out before I do. Usually she wins." Claire, "It's a good day for bubbles. The wind is just right. It's a good day for a lot of things. I'm glad you came out here. I know you're busy with the infrastructure rollout." Claire, "The rollout can wait until tomorrow. Ava told me if I checked my email today, she would personally lock me out of the system. I think she's actually enjoying having more authority than me this weekend." Liam laughed. He watched Lily chase a bubble toward a group of college students playing frisbee. The students laughed and moved aside to let her through. Liam, "Is it weird, being out here like this? People usually recognize you." Claire, "Not in a t-shirt and jeans. Out here, I'm just another person at the park. It's a nice change. In the office, I can feel everyone's heart rate go up when I walk into a room. Here, no one cares. I care. But mostly because you promised to help me understand the new server specs later." Claire, "Liars don't get promotions, Liam. You just want me to do your homework." Liam, "You caught me. But seriously, thank you for everything this week. I know you didn't have to handle things the way you did." Claire looked out at the lake. A few sailboats were tacking against the wind, their white sails bright against the dark water. Claire, "I didn't do it for you, Liam. Not entirely. I did it because the company was becoming something I didn't recognize. Ethan was a symptom of a bigger problem. Seeing the way you handled that dinner, it reminded me why I started Auratech in the first place. It was supposed to be about connection, not just hardware. Well, it worked. The 5th floor feels like a different planet now. People are actually talking to each other, not just about work." Claire, "Good. That's how it should be." Lily came running back to the bench, her face flushed, and a streak of soap suds on her forehead. She plopped down between them, breathing hard. "Miss Megan, Claire," Lily said, catching herself. "Do you want to blow some? It's hard to make the big ones." Claire took the plastic wand from Lily. She dipped it carefully into the bottle and held it up. Instead of waving it, she blew a steady, gentle breath through the ring. A cluster of small, perfect bubbles floated out, catching the sunlight. Lily cheered and jumped up to pop them. Claire watched her for a moment, then looked at Liam. Claire, signing, "She's a special kid, Liam. You've done a great job. Liam, she's my whole world. I was so worried that bringing her into the office drama, would mess her up. But she just thinks she has a new friend who knows a lot about volcanoes. Claire, I hope I am a new friend. For both of you." Liam didn't answer with signs. He simply reached over and took her hand. His palm was large and warm, his grip steady. Claire didn't pull away. She twined her fingers with his and squeezed back. The conversation drifted into the background. They didn't talk about the future, or the company, or the mess with the hidden camera. They didn't make any grand promises about where this was going. They were just two people sitting on a bench in Seattle, watching a little girl pop bubbles. Claire leaned over and rested her head on Liam's shoulder. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun and the solid presence of the man beside her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to be the smartest person in the room. She didn't feel like she had to be the CEO. She was just safe. Liam rested his chin on the top of her head. He felt a deep sense of peace that had been missing for 3 years. He didn't need a diamond ring or a dramatic vow to know that something had changed. The silence between them wasn't a void. It was a bridge. A few yards away, Silas was walking along the paved path. He was off-duty, wearing a plain windbreaker and holding a paper cup of coffee. He paused for a second, looking toward the wooden bench. He saw the engineer and the CEO sitting together, their hands locked. He saw the little girl laughing. Silas didn't say a word. He didn't want to disturb the moment. He simply gave a small, respectful nod to the air, and continued his walk toward the parking lot. On a bench further up the hill, Ava sat with a book in her lap. She wasn't reading. She was watching Claire. She saw the way Claire's shoulders had dropped, and the way she was leaning into Liam. Ava smiled to herself. She had worked for Claire for a long time, and she had seen her win 100 corporate battles, but she had never seen her look this tron-ven. Ava, to herself, finally. She went back to her book, leaving them to their afternoon. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across Gasworks Park, Lily finally ran out of soap. She climbed back onto the bench, exhausted but happy. "Can we go get ice cream now?" Lily asked. "The kind with the sprinkles?" Liam looked at Claire. Liam, signing. "The boss wants ice cream. Any objections?" Claire, signing. "None at all. As long as there are sprinkles." They stood up together. Liam grabbed Lily's hand, and Claire took the other. They walked toward the parking lot, 3 people moving in sync. They didn't look back at the office tower or the city skyline. They just walked, talking with their hands and their voices, perfectly at home in the quiet they had built together. The silence of Seattle was no longer lonely. It was full. And that is our bedtime story for today. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this journey. We hope the story of Liam, Claire, and little Lily brought a bit of warmth to your evening. How did this story make you feel? It's powerful to see how a cruel prank intended to humiliate someone ended up creating a beautiful, life-changing connection. Have you ever experienced a moment where a simple act of kindness completely changed the atmosphere around you? We would love to hear your reflections in the comments. The humanitarian lesson we take away from this tale is that kindness is a universal language that requires no sound to be understood. It reminds us that our true character isn't defined by our professional titles or our social status, but by how we treat those who are often overlooked. In our single dad stories, we often see heroes like Liam, a devoted single dad who proves that integrity, patience, and a father's love are the strongest forces in the world. He didn't need to fight back with anger. He simply stood his ground with grace, proving that the wolves of the world can never truly dim the light of a sincere heart. May this story remind you to look a little closer at the people around you and to choose empathy over judgment. Sometimes, the most profound conversations are the ones held in total silence. Good night, stay kind, and sleep well. We look forward to sharing more heart-lifting stories with you next time.